at Facebook. It's at Joy997 FM on Facebook. You can be watching a live stream. And last week, there was a bit of an outage. So one of the largest mobile service providers in the country, MTN, suffered an undersea cable cut, and which sent most of us into the days of the Stone Age days without internet because people were like, oh no, I don't have internet, I can't live without internet. I mean, we all just realized how very important the internet has become to us. Some people used to say, oh, I just buy my phone just because I want to make calls and everything, but last week I'm very sure that changed. Now we all know, besides air, food and water, there's one other thing we can't live without, and it's what?
Data.
Yeah. But data could be
internet.
So to have this conversation, we have brought in the best people to tell us about the undersea cable cut. All those of you who said it was Mami Wata who was taking her dues from MTN.
Some people said Castro wanted to be. I saw that. Online.
Castro
he wanted
cut the cable.
He wanted us to talk about him again, so he cut the cable.
Also, if he wanted us to talk about him again, why cut the cable?
He should just show up.
He should have just shown up.
I know.
Anyways, and some other people also said, if the cable is cut, all they have to do is just join it. Yeah, someone actually told me that they wanted to, he can show MTN how to join a cable if they don't know how to. I mean, you have to go under the water, get some, those electrical tape, the black one, join the cable and just...
That's how small they thought the cable was.
That's how small they thought the cable was, and that's how easy they thought the fix was. And some people just thought that people couldn't dive under the water. They were afraid of water. So all these myths are going to be busted tonight. I have with me Mr. Samuel Kranting, who is the Corporate Services Executive of MTN. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
I have Magnus Kofi, who's the Head of Operations. And I have Victor Dodu, who's the Head of Planning. Whoa, I have a whole lot of heads here. Literally. Anyway, good to have you here.
Thank you.
So, first off, I've seen you put some containers on the table. Before we get to that, I'd like everyone to introduce themselves and tell us what they do at MTN. Starting from you, Mr. Victor Dodu.
I am Victor Dodu, Head of Networks Planning. I basically handle the radio network and the core network. That is, make sure that users can actually access the network, carry on the activities, and make sure they do what they want to do at any point in time.
Great. Mr. Magnus Kofi.
Well, I'm responsible for the operations of the MTN network, so just to make sure that the network, all the services are running 100%, and if there's an issue, we fix it as soon as possible as we can.
And then Mr. Samuel Granting.
Well, I'm the Corporate Service Executive, and essentially one of my responsibilities are media, corporate communications, internal and external.
Great. So we're going to have a very good conversation. As you all probably know, Geek Squad, we don't do the giddy conversation. We just like to break things down and make our audience understand everything as simply as possible. So first off, why do we need to run a cable underwater to give people internet? Why didn't it have to go through the air where a submarine couldn't cut it? Well, I mean, if it was in the air, the only risk would probably be the birds.
And we do.
I mean, that's if we are believing the Mami Wata conversation. But yeah, we're very level-headed people here. Don't believe in witches. So
sure.
Why do we need that? Are you people with me or not?
Let's just move on.
Good, thank you very much. Now, why do we need underwater cables to provide us internet?
Okay, you basically need to provide connectivity from one end or one country to the other, or from one country towards the internet.
Okay.
Now, what do you need? What options do you have? You basically can go wireless, or you can go fixed with a cable.
Okay.
If you want to go wireless on a global scale, you may have to use the satellite option. If you want to go terrestrial or submarine or whichever landed route, you have to use a physical cable. Now, the options available is to go with a fiber optic cable.
Okay.
You run it across countries or you go through the sea. If you go across countries, it means you need permits for every country, you must get right of way for every country, people in the country to build, operate and maintain this cable, or you go through the sea, which basically has no owner. So you go through the sea,
and you won't dig in front of somebody's house.
You don't have to dig, you don't have to reinstate, you will not be stopped by any authority.
Right.
No mommy water issues as well. Just run it and that's it. You don't take permits from them. Right? So once the cable goes through, you can be able to connect any part of the world to the other.
Okay.
And that's why we normally go by the submarine route. It is pretty much straightforward. It is easier to build. However, when it comes to operation, of course, anytime you have a problem, you must get in there and go and find the cable from the bed of the sea, bring it out and fix. So yes, it's easier to go with the cable option rather than the satellite option, because even if you go with the satellite, you still have capacity limitations. The volume of traffic coming from the various countries and concentrating or terminating in one major point of presence, or what we call the internet peering point, it's so significant that you will not necessarily have the whole spectrum to deal with that. So that's the main difference, or the main reason why you have cables instead of the wireless connection.
Okay. I mean, I think we all know that when you have the cable in your computer, the internet is faster than when you're using Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
So that's why you went with the cable.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that when there's a problem under the water, then you have to go there and fix it. How do you know exactly where the problem is?
Well, there's technology to manage all that.
Right.
I mean, there are cable markers. There's a way to identify where the cable is. But then you can't actually swim to that point to fetch the cable. So you need the ship that is equipped to do just that. The laying and fixing of the fiber optic or submarine cables. That's what it does. We go there with the right equipment. We go under the sea, go find the cable, pick them piece by piece, bring it out, get into the ship, and then try and fix them.
Right.
And that is why it takes time to fix this kind of problems.
Okay.
The ship must go find the cable irrespective of which location it is. And the ship is not everywhere. So it must basically move from one central point to wherever the cable is and then go and fix it.
So in the case of, or you want to say something?
So just to add to that, so there are technologies that we can use to get a general idea of where the cat probably is. So after you get a general idea, the ship goes out and the divers will dive and they try and bring the cable up for the repair.
Okay. So in the case of what happened last week, could you brief us and dispel the rumors that Castro and Mami Water caused it?
Okay, so on that score, today what we know is between Congo and Cameroon there was a break in the cable. And then also between Portugal and London there was another break in the cable. As we speak, the ships haven't arrived and the divers haven't arrived to identify exactly where the issue is and what caused it. But typically from history what we know is that the anchors of ships can cause that. Even earthquakes down the bed can also cause that. And then also sometimes you have some whales and stuff also that can cause it. So as we speak, we're not too clear until the divers get to the location to determine exactly what caused the cuts.
But then people have internet now.
Yeah.
So that means that the cable hasn't really been fixed, but you have found a solution to provide internet to people. So how are people browsing now? You're not using the cable now?
No, so today the cable is still damaged, but what we've done is to get alternate capacity from other cables. So there are a number of cables that run along the coast. As Victor mentioned, you need to get the traffic over to Europe or wherever it is for the internet service for you to resolve your content and bring it back. So now we have capacity on other cables and we are using that to provide the internet today.
So does this affect the speed that people are used to, or it's the same thing?
Today is the same speed.
The same speed. Okay. So
I know you can't really answer this question, but like, how much is all of this costing you? Because it's
a lot of money.
it's not going to be cheap to find a way around. I mean, I know you guys probably put structures in place for this thing happening, something like this happening, but wow, 2 breaks at 2 different points, and Yeah, I think you guys have done exceptionally well. I actually use MTN as well, so any MTN users?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like me.
Yeah.
Yes, Michael.
And that's fantastic. I mean, I've heard so many people are saying that this situation wouldn't be fixed in about a week, or there's so many people who are very skeptical. People who said give it about 3 months, about 6 months before we could get
that would
stable.
Have been a disaster.
Yeah. So,
but you don't think that a
big business like this would lose clientele? But I know you can't answer this, but could you give us an inclination? How much is this costing you? Because the users take it for granted. We just want to have our internet.
What I can say is yes, it costs a lot of money because 2 cuts, 2 specialized vessels, divers going down, but then life must go on. So as Magnus said, we needed to, look for other cable providers that cost money as well to be able to get our customers back up and running, whilst we locate the cable that was cut, the wax cable. And as you indicated, yes, it will take a couple of weeks to repair the damaged cable, but then as I said, life goes on. So that's why we're back up here and smiling, because we've been able to restore the service to our customers.
Yeah, that wouldn't have been a very smiley conversation if we had and I'm pretty sure that you wouldn't have come because you'd be afraid.
Yeah,
Michael and Winston would probably be here with pitchforks.
I was preparing because I was completely, when I say I was completely cut off, this is not like, just a cable cut and selling my data is out, because my house internet also runs on MTN fiber.
Yeah. And you are in the basement.
Yes, when you can testify to this, my roof is 1.5 foot of solid concrete. So no matter what you will do, your cell networks don't get down to
True.
me. So when I'm home, I have no communication except MTN fiber, and even that was gone. So suddenly, as far as the world was concerned, I didn't exist once I entered the house.
Yes. Degraded service.
Yes, I did.
Not gone. Degraded.
Which is very interesting conversation that you mentioned, degraded, because we found a way around it. Using a VPN actually helped us to access internet as smoothly as if nothing had happened during the period where the break was. And I actually found out why this works, but that was a workaround. People were very skeptical when they were told that VPNs actually worked.
So, can we know why VPNs work?
As a matter of fact, we were not down completely.
Yeah.
We had some capacity, so that's why I said degraded and not complete outage. It's just like you having a 10-lane road. You had problem with 8 or 5 of them. Whatever is left, you still have traffic flowing, but then the problem is it will just be slow for a typical user.
Right. Yeah.
So that is the kind of experience that we had for that period, but we didn't have a complete blackout.
Yeah.
Now
But
back to
how does the VPN override that in terms of speed? Because obviously you said it was like diminished service, it wasn't completely out. How does the VPN give its users like 100% service? Because with the VPN, everything was working. Literally everything worked in the house with VPN. How does that happen?
So funny enough, I actually have the answer to that. And
wait, are you saying this so I get a job at MTN?
I mean, is that a possibility?
I mean, if we did.
Let's hear him out.
So basically, what I found out was that the internet, how internet gets to us is in 3 layers, if I'm right. On the IP, it's in 3 layers. There's the radio, that's level 1. Then there's transport, and I think there's network, there too. So VPN rides on the level 2 and level 3. So, and I heard the issue with MTN was largely based on level 1 problem. I don't know. So you tell me if I'm right or wrong.
I also heard something, that said, VPNs, how they work, based on, let me use China as an example.
Yeah.
China uses VPNs to circumvent connection.
The Chinese
blocking.
I don't think China is happy with their people using VPN.
No.
But it allows them to reach websites like Facebook and YouTube, and because MTN is a business and they need to track how much data and how many people are using internet, they have to all go through a certain route. So maybe the 10 lane that you're talking about. But when you're using a VPN, you are using the you're bypassing
bypassing the N1 to use
the barrier where the police is, so that you just go straight. So that's what I found out, but I don't know how true any of this. Now that we have you guys here, which of these is true?
So who gets the job, basically?
Well,
I can't
there's a lot of stories that you hear around all this, but basically because we're not out completely, there was traffic still flowing. What typically happens is the different protocols arrange traffic or packets differently. So one packet type or one protocol will be more efficient than the other. It doesn't necessarily mean that when you use the VPN, you go through any other channel. All traffic flows exactly in the same route. There's no other option. There's no bypass.
There's no Jolu.
No.
Okay. How
so it's only N1, no Jolu.
So it's highway only. Now, a lot of just 3 days ago, I read. So I saw this graph, and this website that was very fun to play with. Insurado, host of Executive Lounge, and we found this website that shows all the undersea cables to every single country. Now, I learned so much playing with that map, and only for us to find out that one such cable that connects to the eastern corridor of Africa had also suffered a cable break cut, and this was because of an anchor drag.
Oh, okay.
So a ship was moving, and an anchor just broke that cable, and this was just 3 days ago. So it seems that this thing is a recurrent problem. It happens a lot. It's either a ship or a whale, like all the things that you mentioned. So what kind of redundancy plans do companies like you have in place that when something like this happens, quickly it should just like how we have the electricity, the switch that automatically switches to the generator. You don't even notice there was an outage. What kind of redundancy
and does insurance cover this?
Wait, let him finish with this before we get to insurance.
So typically, because you have a lot of options with the cables along the coast, you have options to get redundancy. And indeed, we had redundancy. That's how come we didn't go off completely.
Right.
We had redundancy on some other cables. What happened in this case was because the requirements on that alternate cable were a lot, because we had other West African countries going down. So the capacity requirements were quite a lot in there. So that's what caused the slowness in the speeds. But yes, there are options. So if you have, let's say, your primary routes to Europe up north, you could get another cable that is passing through down south to South Africa, all the way through maybe to India, and then all the way back. So you just need an exit to the data centers and the IP POPs in Europe or wherever you have to get to. So there are options for redundancy as well, which we had, but the capacity was inadequate because of the major outage.
So this means that now your redundancy is going to have to be bigger.
Exactly. We're basically going to increase the level of redundancy because, as of today, whatever outage we had is not something that is like a daily recurring thing. So once you are hit by one scenario, you then have to change your redundancy planning as well to be able to fix that kind of problems automatically. The other thing is the capacity that we're talking about are usually not also terminated and lying idle by all cables because the cables are not of the same capacity. So as and when a problem happens, you are able to just switch traffic onto any cable that has spare capacity. There is some arrangement between the cable systems that handles that. So one cable down, the other cables will support with spare capacity. What we typically refer to as the restoration system or restoration networks.
So like the switch breaker you're talking about.
Yeah. So and what's the turnaround time for the backup to take over usually?
Well, it depends. If it's the backup that you have built into your system, it is
instant.
It's instantaneous and the user can't even feel it.
Right.
However, if you have to switch from one cable to the other, complete switch over, then you need a couple of hours or days, depending on how ready the other partners are. Mind you, this kind of cables are also not end to end, so you need a lot of partners across the cable termination points to be able to patch through the services. So it depends on what the setup is, what you are switching onto, how ready the cable is, and how ready their systems are as well.
Okay, so what happens in a case when we have the Meg? Have you seen the movie The Meg before? That megalodon shark, the huge shark that just takes away every cable on the on the coast, and then we are left with no cable. What will we do?
That's for every cable on the East Coast. You have at least 5 or 6 cables. on the west coast another 5 or 6 cables. So then the sharks must be present
everywhere.
That's why I'm just giving you a worst case scenario where let's just say some rogue sharks who just don't like cable.
Well, let's say the likelihood of that is really low, extremely low. Mind you, the cables are powered by about 10,000 volts. So if for a shark or a whale to get there, it will be killed instantly. Right? So that scenario is highly unlikely.
Okay. So I was saying this because I was looking at other possible redundancies. We've had Facebook, we've had Google, we've had Elon Musk talk about putting a balloon with internet in the sky. So we're thinking, but MTN can do this. Put a yellow balloon that looks like the sun, and then it gives us internet. How about that?
Okay, you need to look at this from different perspectives.
Right.
I mean, it's easier to talk about the end user. So the balloons will typically go to the end user at the access layer network, where you just connect, and you hardly use all that capacity.
Sure.
But all this submarine discussion is about the backhauls.
Right.
Now, the backhaul will typically aggregate all this traffic into one huge pipe, and that is where it becomes difficult to manage. So going on a satellite, for instance, or that balloon would be a relatively difficult discussion.
So that would just be for like a small community.
Small community access type, very good.
Right.
But once you start using it for backhauls, and we're talking about high capacity traffic, then it becomes a bit difficult to manage, because you need spectrum and all those things to manage how you push the traffic through.
You mentioned spectrum twice, and when I think spectrum, I only think colors. And I'm sure my listeners are probably also thinking like me. So what is this spectrum? As simple as possible for Sunshine and me.
Okay, it means we're going into transmission, so let me just try and break it down.
Right.
Into English.
For you to send information from one point to the other, you must package the information, send it over a medium to get to the other end, and then you kind of go back and then decode it.
Right.
So whatever you need to be able to send information across can be either a fiber optic cable, a copper cable, a microwave link, or whatever. Now, if you are going into the microwave space, for instance, the wireless space, you need what we typically refer to as frequency or licenses. Those are what I'm referring to as spectrum. So depending on the size of spectrum or frequency that you hold, and depending on the technology that you have available, you'll be then be able to chop this information into very small pieces and transport it over the whatever medium you have.
Right.
So that's what
that's what the spectrum is.
I think let me assist by layman terms. Take the motorway.
Right.
So you have several lanes. So with lane 1, it's one spectrum link, lane 2, lane 3, lane 4, and you take a typical country road, it's much narrower, the speed of the vehicle is much slower. So in terms of a layman's understanding of spectrum, that is how spectrum kind of operates in the air.
So they are just data highways and
data N1.
Yeah, data N1
and Jolus.
What with you and Jolu? Like really?
Did Jolu harm you or something in the past?
That's the first thing that comes to my mind when I think about the N1.
Joel, if you're listening, please come and sponsor the show. So, okay, I see some back to the containers that are on the table. They look very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about cables, like what I'm looking at is very interesting.
Yeah, they don't look like cables.
Well, it seems like a cross section of cable.
No, but like the way the regular cable, people thought it was wires. That's why someone said duct tape.
When I think cable, I think my earphones that I cut and then join.
Okay, even I didn't think that.
Oh, okay. Well, that's what makes this Geek Squad. We're geeks. Dennis, you should show people what we're looking at. If you're watching on the live stream, you'll probably be seeing what we're seeing on the table. And Mr. Magnus, I think you're going to break it down for us. What are these? Or Victor, which of you is going to do it?
No, I'll handle it. Okay. What I have here is a cross section of the submarine cable at different points. So this you see here about almost my wrist is what you see coming out of the sea towards any landing station in any country. It has lots of steel and power cables in there. And this is the main reason why a shark can't bite.
Yeah,
That's
that
very
looks like a
solid
mouthful.
steel.
Is it true to size?
True to size, yeah.
Well, that's actual size.
Yes, that's the
Oh,
actual
okay.
size.
So
Interesting.
all the data that you process, that the whole country processes, passes through
this cable, and that's
Oh,
only
part of
through
it.
the
The
center,
center.
strand.
the strand.
So what's on the outside, like a protective layer?
That's all protection for that fiber.
Exactly why the shark can't get to it.
Now, as you move further out,
Oh, that's the end already.
then the cable, the requirements for protection decreases. So then that's the next layer. It basically will have about the same protection, but then the diameter of the steel protection rods are much smaller. But then they still have a lot of protection in there. And this is what you have all the way till you get into the very high seas.
Okay.
Then the protection shifts from the outside towards the center. So you
Right.
have the relatively lighter cable, but then the protection is still in there with the steels around it. And each of these has power cables running through as well to power the systems to ensure that you're able to transmit your information across.
But one would think that it would be the other way around. That
Yeah.
smaller,
Yeah.
you know how everything comes big to small, but in this case, it's gone small to big.
On
So
both
from-
ends. So the middle is the
Yeah,
same.
I'm talking about the cable itself. So the one in the high seas is actually very small.
very tiny.
You would
And-
expect the bigger one to be in the high
in the
seas.
high seas because of the
And the sharks that...
Yeah, the sharks that we've been talking about. But
Well, I mean, for instance, let's assume it is the rivers. It means any shape, any human activity that
Yeah.
comes next to
Mm.
the beach will take out the cable.
Yeah.
You have a lot of human interventions, human activities, and that's why you need it there.
That
Very big.
protection.
Right. Okay.
The other reason is, remember, the cable in the middle of the sea has to be brought out anytime there's a problem. So
So the lighter
by
the better.
divers.
Okay, that makes
So,
sense. If you're
if-
bringing this heavy one out,
Exactly.
yeah,
How do you bring
But-
it out? I've been wondering that for a few minutes. How do you bring it out? Like, how do you do this? You said earlier that they take the part of the cable that has the problem and then they bring it out. How do you separate
Is it
the
like
part that
Lego?
has the...
You actually-
How do you separate the part that has the problem from the other
Okay.
wires?
Let us assume there's a complete cable break. It means
Mhm.
you have two ends of the cable.
Okay.
Now, when the ship gets there with the divers, they must actually go down there and find the two ends of the cable.
What are the two ends connected to?
They are
Yeah,
broken.
they are
so they are
broken,
just
so
lying
So they're
there.
broken.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
So
okay.
they
Okay.
must find it.
Okay.
Just like any object
You find that.
down there, you go and find the cable, and then they use the necessary equipment, the winches, the whatever it
Oh,
takes
okay.
to bring it up into the.
Oh, so this is cable. This is the part that's broken. So this is the part that comes out and
Yes.
gets fixed and then put back
So
and
you
connected.
So you pull the whole thing
The
out.
whole
Yes.
thing out,
Out.
you
Oh, wow.
hold one end and pull all the way out into the ship. You lock it up so you can have access to the cable. You do the same thing for the other end. Once you get both ends, you go all the way to the cable, the small strands in there, and then you start your splicing or your joining.
Joining. Okay.
You finish the joint, you put the necessary protections in again, and once everything is done, tested, and is working, you drop it back into the sea.
Okay.
Wow. Sounds like a
So
lot of
if
work.
this is what has the problem, regardless of all the protection it has, how would you access the cable in the middle?
There are tools to access.
Yeah, winches. Wow.
There are
Yeah.
tools. So you
There are
can easily
specialized tools for that.
That can
So
break through.
First
to the
of all, you
center.
shut down the power, then you use the tools to break through and then get to the core of the fiber.
Okay.
Then you can start the joining.
And then when you're done, you seal it back.
So the same process. There are the specialized tools. You do the joining from the core, from the middle, all the way out to do the cladding, and then add the steel back, and then put the overall coating on it.
Oh, okay.
And
I'm
just
wondering-
an addition to that, wherever you join the cable, you don't just leave it like that. We have the encasing mechanism that will go back to protect it.
Protect. Okay.
Okay.
So you cannot build another level of protection just
Over
around the
it.
joint.
Alright, you guys mentioned that it's powered. Now, presumably, it's not powered from coast to coast. So, what distances does it typically be powered, and what powers it? Because I also don't imagine that you have solar plants or power plants in the sea keeping these things active.
So there are a number of stations. So for example, the wax cable system has about 14 landing stations. Now, at each point, the cable must be powered. So they are power feeding equipment. They run on the normal generators that we have, the normal ECG, but they are specialized equipment that convert the power so that you can power the cable from station to station. Okay. So before you can work on it, you have to shut down the power from whichever branch you are working on, and then you can have access to the cable.
Okay, so my question now is that when you shut down the power, definitely, like you said, there are some cables that are still working, that still have traffic going through. Is there anything going to happen to the internet generally when the proper fixing begins?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Because you can actually power a station down, but then what you do is you reprogram your cable and your power supply system.
Oh.
So that whatever you have shut down doesn't necessarily take out a complete cable.
Okay.
And the rest of the cable would work for you to be able to isolate this part, fix it, and then you bring it back. Once you are done, you reprogram again.
So that's what you've done to fix the problem while you guys figure out where...
No, the cable is still broken.
It's still broken.
So we've moved from this cable onto
something else. Okay.
Other cables.
It's a completely different cable.
Systems as well.
Okay, so if you're listening to us and you want to join in the conversation, you can send us a WhatsApp or a Telegram to 0244340437. The number is 0244340437. If you didn't understand anything about the undersea cable cut, we're talking to the gurus of MTN, and they're explaining how the whole technology works, how the break unfortunately caused us a little blackout, and how they managed to get it back up and running as quickly as possible. As always, keep it within the conversation we're having. I know a lot of people will just start asking questions that are unrelated. Please, let's stick to the topic. Thank you very much. Now, if for any reason the undersea is fine, but then on land there's a problem, is it the same protocols that you follow in fixing? As in, so like
land break,
like a land cable cut,
cable break.
Well, typically on land we have the responses are quicker because you can easily get to, like I mentioned earlier on, you can actually test and have an idea of where the cable cut is. So within an hour or two, you are there, and then the splicing or the joining of the cable will take maximum 10-20 minutes, and then you are back up. Oh, wow. Because it's on land, there's no real hindrance to repair the cable. And there are a lot of redundancies on land as well. So usually, even if there's a fiber cut, you may not necessarily feel the impact because there's another route immediately that can take the traffic.
So let me read some of the messages. Good evening, Geek Squad. What's up with MTN fiber cable network disruption? Like, they keep on digging trenches and the road construction guys keep destroying them. And what's the plan for fiber in Accra? So, I mentioned, we're talking about undersea, but anyway, it's still fiber. Someone says that the digging and the road construction guys keep destroying the... what are they destroying? Are the road construction guys destroying the cables, or they're destroying the road? I didn't quite get that. If you could please send that message again. Anyway, so back to the conversation. Now, I want to digress a bit to talk about something that I'm sure everybody's probably wondering. So MTN has brought us 4G, and now we've seen that there's 5G somewhere.
Okay.
Please, MTN. When are we getting 5G? Are we ever going to get 5G?
That's a fair question.
That question would probably, your best answer would come from a multiplicity of stakeholders. Because in terms of 5G, the policyholder has to make the spectrum available. Licenses would have to be issued. Then operators like MTN would then be able to look at 5G and probably start offering 5G services.
Right. Also, it doesn't even start from you. You guys are not the one who starts this bid for 5G.
Yes, because the spectrum is a national asset and it belongs to the nation, and therefore that is where it needs to start from. Okay. Because as we know, that spectrum for 5G. We know what it is, but then the country needs to offer this various 5G spectrum bands to operators, and then we can start investing in 5G, and then customers can start enjoying 5G services.
All right. Sorry, I had to digress. Sometimes I just like to ask. I like to have wishful thinking. So, good evening. Kudos to the MTN team. Victor's a brilliant guy, and with him, the issues will be solved. That's from Isaac Newton, first country head of I Engineering Ghana. Hey, Victor, you're getting fat. Wow. Hey, you're brilliant. So, can I come and intern with you? Because me, I like.
Yeah. You know, when you were talking, I was really. What I want to ask is, where engineering school you go?
Which engineer? I'm sure a lot of
I've been wondering
young ones, listening who want to go into engineering will probably want to know what you learned, where you learned.
Yeah.
This is an interesting question. I'll try and answer it. For me, it doesn't really matter which school and what you learned, right? It's more about the passion, the love for the job or the love for that environment, and then what you do to yourself on a daily basis. I am a proud product of the Accra Polytechnic.
Wow. I know.
And I did upgrade myself after that. I did actually go through, and I already have an MSc in engineering and management. So probably that is where with the I don't know if I can advertise for them. But I always talk about where I started from and humble beginnings. Industry has been very good to me.
Great.
And we are ready to share the knowledge with anyone. So feel free and just put in your application for internship.
For internship, yeah, welcome for internship. So, I mean, my boss also went. I think Accra Polytechnic has produced some very good engineers. My boss, which is Ndo, he also went to Accra Polytechnic. He's also a very good broadcast engineer. So yeah, we all go to Accra Poly, yeah. And then after that, we'll upgrade ourselves. So I heard other networks.
To ask, but what is Accra Polytechnic?
There you don't worry.
Sunshine, you're not from around here, so we pardon you. I heard other networks in other countries were affected too. How many? That's from Kiko.
The cable outage actually affected a lot of countries, most of us on the western coast, but it looks like West Africa was heavily impacted because of the isolation between Portugal and Congo. So any country relying on the cable within these 2 points will be completely isolated. Right. South Africa also had about the same problem. Congo had something. Cameroon also were impacted.
I think was it 9? There were like 9 countries that had this issue.
Yeah. So West African coast,
Seychelles, Nigeria, Liberia,
Congo,
Ghana, Ivory Coast, Benin,
Guinea, Conakry, all those countries were affected.
Now, something I've been wondering, you guys obviously are prepared for something like this happening, cable cuts under the sea, because if it happens, you saw what happened. Suddenly, a lot of angry customers are on your back and you need to scramble to give capacity back. How often does it happen? Because I'm sure there have probably been some times where there have been undersea cable cuts, but we, the customers, haven't necessarily noticed, or maybe there's a slight dip in service quality. But you guys can tell us better. How often does it happen? Let's say, for example, over the past year or two.
Well, to have the kind of outage that we had, it hardly happens. This is quite unprecedented. So an outage that would take out this amount of traffic is actually unprecedented. It doesn't happen often. What usually happens, you could have maybe what we call a shunt fault, where the metallic part of the cable gets in touch with the water and causes some short circuit. But that you can fix. You can still have traffic flowing through other routes while you fix it. So the customer would not perceive any outage like that. So it doesn't really happen.
Okay, so now this probably cost you guys a lot of money in the sense that your users couldn't use your service. That means that you're losing revenue. Now, I don't know if Mr. Cranston would disclose an estimated how much did you lose in revenue over this period?
I wouldn't be able to say how much we lost in revenue, but then for the kind of outage we suffered, the downtime and the revenue impacts would be there was revenue impact, but as to the extent of it, I'm not able to tell. No, we're not able to tell.
Okay. Now, for users who are using your system that went down, a lot of them were wondering, what should we do? For instance, businesses were hugely impacted. I heard some people complaining that the services weren't working. Now, what would you advise as a service provider to people or businesses who were suffering from stuff like this?
Well, what I'd say is that, as Magnus indicated, what happened was extremely rare. But then what we at MTN have done, because every time you go through things like that, you take some lessons from it. And as we've indicated, we have put in more, we have signed up to more cables, so that in terms of learnings from here, next time we have this kind of rarity, we do not expect the impact to be this much.
Right. So we have a message here. So someone's asking, do these countries share one big cable, or are the cables co-joined from one end to the other? That's also from Kiko.
Okay. Talking about wax, for instance, it has 14 landing points. So it starts from London and it runs all the way down to South Africa, and it touches 12 other countries. Typically in the cable you have what they refer to as the high speed, which doesn't necessarily do the omnibus thing.
Right.
And there is another pair of fibers that will do that omnibus. And even then, it's not like every country that it touches. So there is a way you design this cable to ensure that you have an express route, which is your typical motorway, then you have a typical country route, and then you have something like something more like the Jowulu, So there are different levels of the connectivity, and then in terms of design, you ensure that extra high speed is provided, medium speed is provided, and about what you need for day-to-day activities is also provided in the design.
Okay. Now, here's one thing too that happened on the day, and I think this, Mr. Quarantine, would come to you. Some people got the notification of the downtime late in the evening, and they ended up playing with the settings of their phone to the extent when their service was actually working, they didn't even have internet. So is there a place, or is there a way that people can get this information in advance before, or rather than waiting for someone to forward it to them on WhatsApp, and then they would have done a lot of damage on their phone and still say the internet is not working, meanwhile it's working, but you've messed up with your phone?
Well, yes, in terms of issues on the network, what you would recall that as soon as it happens, we use your medium, radio stations, etc., to reach out, because when the device in your hand, for example, there's a network downtime, and I send you a message on there, you would not receive it. That's why, in our operating license, etc., we're required to use print media, radio, TV, and whatever means we are able to reach out. So when the issue started happening, we reached out that way, and our voice as well as text messages were not affected. So we sent those as well. So if you miss the text messaging, you might hear it on the radio or through some other means. So that's what we did.
So basically, you don't play with your phone when your internet starts messing up. Okay, so don't telcos in Africa own satellites? And if they have, can't they share? Don't telcos in Africa have own satellites?
Wow. That's a very huge presupposition.
Do you own a satellite?
Well, telcos typically will rely on satellite service providers who own this as an infrastructure, and they provide across countries. Because typical telco will be within a country. Even if you belong to a group, you are not in every part of the world. So you don't necessarily have to invest there. But then the right partners will do that on your behalf. So you just have to take advantage of whatever infrastructure they have to deliver your service. But like I mentioned earlier, much as satellite can be an option, in terms of scale, it is not really an option for you.
Not practical.
So practicality and all that, it wouldn't help. That's why you see a lot of cables coming up. There are a number of new cables that are already under discussions, which will be coming up very soon. Very high capacity as well. So you can, from that perspective, you can see that even though satellite is a technology that is still available to us, everybody is going on the cable because it's high speed internet connectivity you want. You don't necessarily want to deal with the latency, which kind of creates your traffic situation where you click and you have to wait for the page to open. We've gone past that. Everybody wants to click and it opens.
Oh, yes.
So
I think people in the rural areas are the ones who still rely on satellite. Not in rural areas in Ghana.
Yeah.
I mean, in the Western world. So, someone's asking, is MTN responsible for the cost of repair of the cuts under sea cables since they are not the owners of the infrastructure? How is that worked out?
So it's a consortium,
right?
So a number of operators come together to build a cable. So whatever cost is incurred in repairing, that proportion of your share is passed on. That's how it works.
So, like I was asking about insurance, I guess that answers
yeah, that's what
yeah.
answers it. So if you want to join,
another question. Sorry. So whoever damages the cable gets to go.
Whoever or whatever.
Okay, yeah. I mean,
whatever I can understand. I mean, you're not gonna walk up to the shark and be like, okay,
but like I'm saying, like if it was a ship and you've targeted the ship, like you know which ship and what ship liner or whatever was responsible for this, do you ask them what's up? Like, how does it work?
No, especially if you know who did it, aren't you allowed to legally approach them?
Well, if you have information, of course, if it's something that was deliberate, but in this case we don't know if it was deliberate, there's nothing to prove that. There could be some additional discussions that would go on, but most of the time, before you get to the location, you cannot find any activity there, because if it's an anchor or it's a whale or a shark or whatever it is, you'll find anybody there.
But if it's a ship, you'd know the route.
It took based on where the anchor
and you get speedboats with sirens and okay, so if you want to join in the conversation, you can just send a message to 0244-340437 on WhatsApp and Telegram. And my producer is saying that we have enough time to accept a few phone calls. So 0244-340437 and 0302-216-541. So if you have any questions about the undersea cable, I can see a lot of people are typing messages on WhatsApp, but maybe you'd prefer saying it, just call. Please, like I said, on topic about the undersea cable and fiber. No, MTN, I scratched my card and today the credit is not loaded. The people here are not responsible for that, so they may not be able to answer it. Thank you very much. Now, Sunshine, you are our wild card here, and why do you always look like I'm calling you out?
Let's go on.
So, in summary, with everything that's been said by Victor Magnus and Mr. Kranting, everything is cool with you. You understand everything. I just want to make sure that the audience understands.
It does. It does all kind of make sense. Like at the end of the day, there isn't much much else you can expect MTN to do. They've done their best by finding an alternative means for us to still have internet service, which is great. Unfortunately, it is costing you guys a lot of money to fix it, but then an effort is being made, and there's nothing more I would ask for.
So, hello, good evening. This is Chris Papali. What is? So some people are saying that their data was dormant for the days that the internet was down. So, what did MTN do about this?
But if your data is dormant, it's not in use. So
my data, when it came back, it didn't go anywhere. I think I even got more.
Wait, what?
Yeah, like
moving on.
I just browse.
Guys, what's up?
But I think that if it wasn't working, it's not really in use, is it?
Yeah, but some of the packages actually expire, and so if you weren't able to use them and they expire, that's the end of the data.
But
yeah,
data packages don't bundles don't expire. So what we have done at MTN, and I think I was on air to talk about that yesterday, was that in relation to the inconvenience our subscribers suffered as a result of them not being able to use their data or make or in terms of slow speeds, etc. We have taken a decision to not to give an inconvenience package, and I indicated that the details are being worked on, and once that is finalized, we would come out with something. As you indicated, Kobby, your data didn't go anywhere because when you don't connect, it doesn't go anywhere. You're not charged. But then, in terms of goodwill to our customers, and to say a thank you to our customers for standing by us when things were difficult, we're coming out with an inconvenience data package.
You have a call on the line. Hello?
Wow.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening. Sorry for keeping you waiting.
You'll buy me a credit.
No, MTN is here.
Yes. My name is Achu. Actually, Mr. Crampton happened to be one of my boss.
Oh, nice.
I just want to congratulate them for the way they explained things to us. But then, I want to find out what are they doing about this mobile money thing too as well. And then if they can sometimes give us some documentaries about some of these things, we wouldn't be complaining too much. For instance, something happened in front of my community. This is not about network issue. This is about ECG issue. We called them several times, and finally, when they came to solve the problem, they couldn't solve. They came back about twice or three times before the problem is being solved. And sometimes, if you call, the kind of words that they throw back at you. Hello?
Yeah, we're here.
Yeah, so other organizations should also learn from this. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you very much, Achu. And I think that's why we're having this education, is basically to educate people on how these things work. We will have one on Momo. Definitely Mr. Cranton would give us someone to come and educate people. Because we realize most of these things that happen is because of lack of education. So once people have that knowledge, they wouldn't be scammed, they wouldn't have all these issues, and they would understand how the systems work. Thank you very much for calling, Achu. So final words from Victor, Magnus, and Samuel, Mr. Cranton.
Okay, we can only say thank you to the customers for the patience they had throughout the challenges. We on our side will also do our best to ensure that we do not have this kind of outage anytime soon. We're also going to put the right measures in place to ensure that this will not be anything that anybody can remember anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, just to re-echo, thank you, everybody, all the customers, once again. It was a tough couple of days, but thankfully we are fully back up with the capacities that we had before, and the experience is still the same. So thank you very much.
Well, to add to that, I would, George, Magnus and Victor have thanked the customers. I would like to say a big thank you to our international engineers as well as our local guys here, Victor, Magnus, and the team. They've been phenomenal. They've been fantastic, working round the clock throughout the night to ensure that we're able to get back up to speed within a couple of days. And as we've indicated, the wax cable itself that got damaged would probably be repaired in about 3 to 4 weeks, but the engineers were up to speed and up to the task, and were able to switch us to other cables, and we're grateful to all of them as well as our customers.
Thank you very much. The show is Geek Squad. My name is Kobby Spiky Nkrumah. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Winston, and thank you, Sunshine. Thank you to my producers. I won't mention your name because we don't have time.